All right, Will, can you take us back to the most painful moment of your addiction, just to jump straight in?
Literally just, how you doing? Fucking 30 seconds ago now, straight into some of the worst bits of my history. That's put on the spot.
Hey guys, just a really super quick one before we jump into the show. If you could like, subscribe, and follow us on whatever platform you're watching or listening on, that would be greatly appreciated. It helps us to hack the algorithm and reach more people looking for help and support. Also, guys, this episode comes with a trigger warning because of the content that we're talking about. Because of that as well, we do get shadow banned sometimes on social media websites because of the graphic nature of our content. So if you want to have the real, raw, uncut, unfiltered conversations, join our free newsletter that comes out weekly. It's called the Good Gear Newsletter. It's 100% free. You can find the links for that in the description. We help people to beat addiction with some tips and tricks, help people to build their AOD careers, alcohol and drug careers, with professionals that we talk to, and push for better policy change with the policy work that myself and some of the team does as well. So join that below if you want to have those raw conversations. But let's jump into the show. Peace.
The worst part, I remember, I guess there was the lead up to me going to rehab, where I was I was going through a period where I had insomnia, and then I was just drinking to pass out,
right,
as a solution, because every problem in my life that was probably been caused by my drinking, the solution was to keep drinking. And this was when I was like overweight. I was getting several episodes of gout. My skin was yellow.
Yeah.
All the lovely stuff with functioning alcohol addiction. And if the only function is to be an alcoholic. And I remember there was one evening, I remember this time I was binge watching The Walking Dead for some reason. And I had an evening where like a bottle of rum was pretty standard, if not with a mixture of perhaps six beers or something beforehand, maybe 12. And then I had a bottle of rum one evening, and then I went into my housemate's room and he had a bottle of rum. So I drank that as well, and sort of woke up the next afternoon because I was passing out at like 6-7 o'clock in the morning, and then waking up in the afternoon, and then realized I was like, see the two empty bottles of rum. I was just like, oh, that's like nearly 1.5 liters of alcohol. And that was kind of like another level of like, oh, this is this is entering a new echelon of drinking that I hadn't really ever done before. And coming out of, I guess, with that, and then sort of like the next evening, we had some people around. It was State of Origin Game 2 up here, and we had some people around. I only really remember two things: was just going down to the liquor store, buying the bottle of rum for my housemate that I drank to replace that. And then at some point in the evening, I worked up the courage to just get my phone and then just text mum and just said, I need help. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And the next morning she appeared in my bedroom at where I was living. I was living with a couple of mates in a pretty cheap rental, I guess the northern part of the Gold Coast. And she just came in and she's just like, pack your shit. You're not living here anymore.
Wow.
We're going to sort this shit out. And then within 48 hours, I was in a rehab facility.
Wow. Yeah, so much to unpack there. So it's interesting. Why do you think it's crazy how much you can like normalize the level of alcohol that you're consuming, right? Like, so it was only until you got to like 1.5 liters that you kind of, or not only until, but when you just went like that was a breakthrough moment where you just went, holy shit, like this is kind of extreme.
Yeah, but I guess because, when people ask, well, how much were you drinking? And I can visually see that as, well, that was a metric because, like I used to say I had a 12 drink minimum. So it would be, and that was just 12. Usually I would just start with like 12 beers. And that could be anything from like, 1.1 standard drinks. If it was like Stone and Woods, I could easily polish off a carton of that. Or, I used to deal with these American beers called Pabst Blue Ribbon, and they used to come in. I don't know whether they still do, but they came in pint cans, and one can was 1.8 standard drinks. I used to polish off 12 of those pretty easily,
Yeah.
and then you start with beers, then you get onto the spirits. And I mean, I usually a lot of the time because I'm from Queensland, it was a lot of Bundaberg rum.
Yeah.
Um, if not, I don't know. I guess it'd be like Jim Beam and Jack Daniels or whatever. And then if I made
People,
it,
pe-
and then if I
people,
made it,
people drink
if I,
Bundaberg in Melbourne as well.
yeah, yeah. I guess if Queensland expats in Victoria, I'm sure they would. So,
Yeah.
but but then I'd have that, and then I'd go out, and then if I made it out, and then just had whatever it was I had out, and just I wouldn't remember whatever I had sort of out. Like I wouldn't keep track of how much I was drinking. So
Yeah.
there was always that element to it. But I guess actually visually, like because I had mates who like, oh well, they were big drinkers, so polishing off a bottle of rum was no big deal. It wasn't until I guess it became apparent to me that I was drinking more than everybody else,
Yeah.
possibly because I was doing it a lot more frequently than everybody else as well.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to get to that point where you were drinking that much?
I mean, I guess, like I guess I started, I had my first drink when I was 15, but that was just, okay, this is what we're doing, I guess, as teenagers. This is what the circle of friends that I was hanging around with doing. And then once I got to 18 and you could buy it yourself, all right, well, I can do it whenever I want now. So a lot of the time it was, I guess I was doing a lot of partying and going out, and drinking coincided with that. And then I guess I remember, I guess a significant moment for me was in my early 20s. I had a relationship breakdown, um, which I caused. And then a lot of the guilt and shame that came from that kind of led me down a sort of downward spiral into depression and hopelessness. And then kind of just felt worthless and kind of down as kind of a shit piece of human being garbage. And so then I guess one of my solutions was, well, if I don't feel like living anymore, I'll just leave it up to chance and I'll just drink myself stupid. So obviously, the more frequently I was doing that, that just kind of accelerated. Obviously, the more that you do it, the higher the tolerance you build and the more that you need.
And was that a conscious thought? Like, I'll just drink myself, like, I don't really feel like living anymore. I'll just drink myself stupid. Or was that?
Yeah, because made, I was really in a dark place. And I mean, I even made some half-assed little attempt at trying to potentially end my life, where I was living was like, it had we had like this roof that had some awnings that I was getting like my guitar lead from, I guess, my electric guitar, and trying to throw like a make some sort of noose and then throw it over the awning, but I couldn't get it over. And then I was like, oh, I got to go to work, and then I forgot about it, and then I never thought about doing it again. So it's one of those, you forget to, you're in a state of like wanting to do something drastic, but then you forget about it and then go off and continue doing whatever you're supposed to be doing. But it always came back to just like, oh, I don't know if you'd really have the guts to do it. And so, yeah, it was just kind of like, well, the only thing that makes me feel good, because I guess I didn't feel that great, was that warm feeling, I guess, that alcohol can provide you. And then I just became dependent and reliant on it
Yeah.
to make me feel better in whatever difficult moment I was going through. And then it was just off to the races with that. And I was just doing it, yeah, just as often as possible. And it was really the only hobby I had, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I guess with some people, they'll grow out of it if they just get to a point like, I'm sick of drinking. And I mean, I meet people like that now who aren't really big on it, which is always interesting to me, especially like people who are a lot younger than me. I'm just like, fuck, I wish I snapped out of it as
Yeah.
quickly as the people around me did. I kind of had to be locked away for a bit for it to finally sort of start sinking in that there is a better way.
Yeah. Interesting. And I'm keen to ask you about sort of, yeah, your own personal experience with recovery and your views on it and things like that. But what was the emotional space like in those final sort of moments or whatever? Like, how would you describe that? When you're just sitting there and you call your mum and you say, "Hey, I can't do it anymore." Like, what's going on internally?
Um, I mean, at that given time, like I don't really remember a whole lot. Um, what I do remember when I went into rehab was I just kind of was relieved. It was just this, like I was in a place where it was just like, oh, I can't drink here. I mean, I could, but then if I did, then I'd be thrown out, and then I'd just be in more strife than I was already in.
Yeah.
And so there was like a relief sense of just like, okay, I can't drink here. Okay, this is good. You know, like I'm out of any environment where I can be tempted by wanting to drink, even though if there was probably a part of me that like if you put me back out a week later, it could have easily just gone back to square one. And the decision that my parents made, I guess, I mean, it was that when I was going to get out of rehab, I wasn't going to go back to where I was living.
Yeah.
Even though the mates that I was living with, that kind of setup fizzled out not long after I left, and they all kind of moved on to other things. So,
Yeah.
but you know, like as I guess I did was just I there was always the back of my head. I was just like, well, maybe this will be temporary. Maybe this is just like a hiccup in the road. Maybe I'll go. I always had a thought that like, oh, I'll probably give this a year if this is going to work. Like there wasn't a lot of high hope
Yeah.
because I just thought that this was all life was going to be. I was just going to have to battle this thing um, for however long of a life that I had left, and because I just obviously I didn't really see that there was much of a life worth living in those circumstances. So
Yeah.
to be put in a place where okay, we're in here, and you know, taking inventory of my life where I just basically had nothing. I was like, all right, well, you may as well. You've got nothing on the outside, so you may as well put all your time and energy in here to sort of rebuild yourself and perhaps retinker your life into a better direction.
Yeah.
Which is I guess the start of this journey, which is I mean I was just thinking about it before. It was just like it's like 6.5 years ago now that I've kind of been on this thing. So
Does it feel like a long time?
it feels. I mean, to think that that life was also part of me is it's just foreign to me now. Like I just can't fathom that that
Yeah.
was something that I spent so much of my time, pretty much most of my 20s doing, to where I don't have much of a memory of most of my 20s, which can kind of get me down at times. You know, a lot of people, you know, those time, you know, your 20s, you know, going out and experiencing life and trying new things and all that. And yeah, it's under a haze of alcohol for me. So, because yeah, like I was probably drunk for most of it. And, you know, like I first got sober at 27, quit for 2 years, went to overseas, relapsed for 6 months, and then got sober again at 30. So at least I've got my most of my 30s so far as as sober, because I think it was so I turned 30 in December 2019, and then I got sober again February 1st, 2020. So there was a few months been drunk in my 30s, but most of it, yeah, it's been sober.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So the timeline. So the time that you called mum, was that the first time you got sober, or was that the second
Yeah,
time? Yeah.
yeah. So that was probably like that was when it was probably the worst of it, and then texted mum, got help, went to rehab for 6 weeks, stayed sober for 2 years. I just focused on my health and fitness and working. I was working as an Uber driver, and then I had this goal that I wanted to go travel Europe.
Yeah.
So I just clamped down and focused on that, and you know, health and fitness. You know, once you cut booze out, and then I actually, because I wasn't very good with my diet either. I never really put much focus on that. I just kind of ate whatever the hell I wanted, and then when I put more structure to that, you know, going from like 120 kilos plus to down to like 93 kilos um, within like a couple of months, and then going back and forth and fluctuation of weight when I started lifting weights and stuff. And then when I got to, I saved up enough money for my trip, sold the car, was like, okay, I'm going to go on this trip. But there was always a part of me that had in the back of my head, even in those 2 years, I had this little voice in my head, just like, I think you're going to drink again. Like there was always just something. There was always just this voice that was
Yeah.
just like, at some point, I think it's going to come back. And as much as I know, I was just put it off. It's just like, well, we're not there. We're not there. We'll deal with it when we deal with it. And then obviously when I got overseas, well, I flew over to Dubai, and then I was in Dubai, and Dubai is kind of, I don't know, it's a mixed bag because it's a Muslim country, but then it's kind of liberal. So there's places where you can drink, but I kind of just went out for the day and just explored stuff. And by the end of the day, I was just tired. And where I was staying, it was a hostel, but it was essentially some apartment they've just converted into a hostel. So there's some shady characters in there. And then when I got to London, the first night, I get there, check in, and they give you a drink card for the bar in the hostel. And first alarm bells went off for me, and I was like, oh, again, push it off because I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed, wake up the next morning. I'm going to go out and explore London. Haven't been to London before. And then I'm in the reception. Two guys are checking out. They're like, hey, we're checking out. We didn't use our drink cards. Do you want ours? So now I have three. And so alarm bells are just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh shit. And even though there was no, like, obviously I didn't need to use them, but the thoughts in my head were just, where this voice that was getting louder and louder, just like, oh, I think you're going to drink again. I think you're going to drink again.
And I guess in the moment you took it from him instead of saying maybe like, oh, hey, I'm all good or whatever,
Yeah. Like, yeah, I hadn't practiced or done the work that I've done now. Because the main reason was I completely avoided social interactions in those 2 years.
Right.
Like I basically would only see my parents maybe like once a week. Friends I might have who knew about my situation, I might have seen like a handful of times. But like actually being in those environments sober where everyone else is drinking, I hadn't done it all. I avoided those entirely, which I think for people like us, like at some point that's an important step to do, to prove to yourself that you can be in those environments without needing any sort of substance to get you through it. And it's always something that even I talk to people now who, like they struggle with, even if they don't have an issue with alcohol, they find that they struggle with it with their peers when they say they don't want to have a drink. And then it's just interrogation mode comes on. So it's like, well, why aren't you drinking? Blah, 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 blah. And it's always a funny thing. And I always tell them, well, just do what I did, just become a full blown alcoholic and then get sober. And then no one will ask you again when you, just commit to the process fully. And then you may not have any issues. But, so yeah, then because when I started drinking when I was 15, it was through peer pressure. So I was petrified of meeting somebody who'd be like, do you want to drink? I said no. And then they would just keep bugging me, asking me for it. And I wouldn't have the strength to say no. Which never actually happened because I'd convinced myself that it was going to happen. So I thought, well, you may as well take it into your own hands and drink anyway. So that's kind of what I did eventually in that afternoon and had the first drink. And it was kind of like, all right, well, 2 years is down the drain. And I mean, the first night was fine. Like I woke up the next day, a bit average as you do. But if there was a part of me that thought, oh, maybe this time it'll be different, because that night wasn't a problem. But like within a week, it went off the rails and all sorts of fucking shit started happening. All sorts of nonsense while I was overseas. And yeah, it just became a complete mess pretty quickly. And so I don't look back on that now as like, it's just kind of it's a one final reminder of back out into the circus and just thinking, yep, it's not going to be any different. In fact, I can't see it. It's not going to just get progressively worse if you want to go back out again. So once I finally managed to get myself back out of it again, which I just did, I just managed to quit one day on my own. And especially worked on socializing, interacting with people sober, and then just getting comfortable with that. And then just being that final state of acceptance that, it's just not going to work for me. Even 3.5 years sober again, which is the longest that I've been now in this, I guess, 6.5 year journey. People all the sort of inner work, healing, whatever, all that sort of stuff. And, you people, oh, well, would you consider going back, trying to have a different relationship with it? I just don't see the point. I don't see the point, playing with that fire again,
Yeah, yeah. And so did you like in that? Well, I want to ask you two things. I don't know which one to ask first, but so in that like 2019 period when you got sober again, and then you said you did more work on yourself. So you worked on like social, getting back and being able to interact socially without alcohol and things like that. But did you do like what a lot of people talk about now? I guess like kind of like trauma healing work or like internal stuff. Did you do any of that? Because I think it's interesting just to hear like people's healing journey, kind of, and what they did.
Yeah, well, I wound up in kind of these spiritual communities, I guess, last year. Like I was in a men's group last year, obviously, like where I met Mitch, where we started the Last Drinks podcast. I mean, I don't know if we mentioned that when our first chat we did, but so there was a lot of doing workshops like that. And I mean, I did some men's workshops as well. Like the trauma stuff, I mean, I don't know whether I just kind of got sucked into this whole idea, well, I must have trauma. It must be something there must be something that's driving me to drink or something. And, you know, like I chatted with some people we've had on the podcast about who would, I guess, be these coaches that would talk about healing your traumas and stuff. And I kind of say, well, I blacked out a lot when I was drinking. So if I don't have any memory of what these traumas are, how do I bring these traumas up to process them? And it's just, there wasn't really an answer that I got. And I mean, I even did so my friend, I mean, I went out and did a mushroom ceremony with this friend of mine. It was a group of us, and
I
I
remember
went in with,
listening to your podcast when you kind of unpacked it. It's
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, lying in a forest where some dude's blowing didgeridoo noise into your crotch and you're just tripping and you're just like me going into the intention, because I'd never done it before, and I just, so there's always this like, oh, am I going to get addicted to this? And really that really wasn't the result of it. But you
Yeah.
go in with like, all right, well, whatever needs to be presented to me, present itself to me. And then I did it, and then nothing presented itself to me. I just tripped in the forest for 3 hours or whatever it was.
with
But it felt,
didgeridoo smoke on your crotch. Yeah, I
yeah,
love it.
yeah. So it's just, it was a strange experience, but and you feel quite good and euphoric, I guess, the rest of the evening and the rest of the next day. But there wasn't really anything that presented itself to me, and and then I just think, well, maybe you need to do more of it. And it's just like, oh fuck, is this? Then it's just, I think maybe there's just, if there was things that, um, yeah, like I mean, one of the main things, obviously, this, which was quite profound, which I've talked about, was so this relationship that I had in my early 20s, like I fucked it up because I was messing around and being unfaithful, but that was because I was drinking heavily and just being a complete whoremonger, I guess. And I I eventually, because I always wanted to, but I just didn't want to come back into her life at all. But like I said, well, I wanted, because I don't know if I ever. Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
Ugh, ran out of it. Ugh.
Saliva just became scarce.
Just lost my voice. Yeah, so I wanted to take responsibility for what I did and apologize, because I actually don't think that I ever did back then, or I can't remember. So it was part of an intention setting. So yeah, so it was just, I wanted to take ownership for what I did, take responsibility, apologize. And I found her on social media, and I was like, okay, well, let's just write a message. Wrote this message, and I was like, all right, well, my only intention is to send it. It's just to send it. That's the only thing I can do, really. I can't really expect anything else. So I did that, sent it. It's like, sorry for what I did. It was not a good time for me, and yeah, sent it. And then I didn't think anything of it, because I was like, all right, well, I've set my intentions, and then off we went. And I think it was like a couple of months later, I was getting up one morning to go for a workout with the boys, and I see check my Instagram, I think it was, and then see the messages, and then I see there's a message from her, and she forgave me, and then all that sort of stuff came up. So then I've gone to try and go work out, got through that, get to the breathwork session, bit of meditation, and yeah, I'm just like weathering up, and then someone's asked me, "You're right?" It's just like, yeah, I don't know, and then it's just like crying for fucking 3 days.
Wow.
Because it was kind of unexpected, but it was I didn't really know what to expect, and it was quite healing to receive that gift, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this has something to do with it that I'm just fucking getting worked up about.
maybe.
It is one of those powerful things where if you're able to, and like I did that with my family as well. Like I wrote letters of apology to my parents and siblings, and
Yeah.
you know, and then I always had like, oh, this is someone you need to apologize to as well. And you know, the fact that she was gracious enough to gift me with forgiveness for what I did, yeah, that just, it was like, yeah, just a big release, lots of emotion, lots of, yeah, I was like crying on and off for fucking like a couple of days. It was just,
wow.
Partly at times I'm just like, fuck, this is a lot you've been carrying, because this was like 10 years of carrying this shit.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, like it is just like a release, and then you can let that go finally, and just, yeah, just kind of move on and move forward with you, and not carry that with you, I guess. Because yeah, I guess I would have carried that guilt and shame and embarrassment for me for, I guess, that period.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a pretty powerful thing. I mean, that's probably the only sort of thing that I can think of in this sort of healing journey. That was probably a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. Did you do like 12-step programs after rehab, or in rehab, or throughout your recovery at all?
So I went to AA because that was one of the it was like one of the offers in the rehab was they'd take you to 2 AA meetings a week. So when I went, I was kind of just like, all right, well, let's just do everything. So then I went to AA and I kept going after when I finished my 6 week stint, and then, you know, 90 days, 90 meetings, did that, then kind of just kept going. Eventually got to a year. I thought I was just going to go down the line of just like, all right, we'll get the fucking hell.
obviously, I'll edit parts of it out. I won't have you on there just like dying the whole time.
Yeah, cheers. It's just annoying. It's just like, fuck, we just keep losing your voice.
I get it. It's almost like you get dust or some shit caught in your throat. It's weird. It happened to me the other day when I was with a client. I was like, I wasn't anxious or anything. I just couldn't talk.
Yeah. So like I did AA, you know, did the 90 meetings, 90 days, kept going for a year, and I kind of just went through the rhythm of like, well, I guess I'll get a sponsor, I'll do the steps and do all that. And then I was speaking to my psych from the rehab, and he was, you know, asking me how I was doing. I was like, yeah, look, I think I found a home group, and I guess I'll just do the steps and do all that shit. And he's like, well, is that what you want to do? And I was like, well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? He's like, well, you don't have to. And so I was like, oh, so I don't have to. He's like, all right, well, I won't do it then. Because I never really felt called to do it. I just used AA as the tool, and just as a tool, like it is quite helpful. I found it helpful, but then I guess for me, it got to a place where I felt like it served its purpose, and then I could move on to other things.
Yeah.
Because
I was going to say the whole, like, as you would know, the whole like the apologizing to people or making amends to people is like part of the, I think it's like the 9-step of memory. And it's one of the things I talk to people about doing as well. Like if they come and do our programs or whatever, it's like part of the thing that we get them to do is, you know, like make a list, talk through like who you're going to maybe apologize to, make sure it's like, you know, you're not going to just cause more damage or whatever. But
Mm.
because it's such a powerful thing, I did it through the 12 steps, and it was a powerful thing in my life as well. Just fucking getting so like just thinking about other people and going, holy shit, I actually did do the wrong thing, and taking accountability for it. It is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a healing thing for yourself, and then not having the expectation of how that's going to be received, and if you are blessed with forgiveness, and just like, hey, look, you know we appreciate, to step up and take accountability. I mean, is truly a powerful thing, because and then to receive forgiveness from those that you may have wronged in the past is can be a truly healing thing. And so that's where, I guess, for people who are dealing with addicts, if you're able to, if they're in a better place and take responsibility for the things that they've done and held accountable and apologize, and if you're able to provide them with that forgiveness, it can be a really powerful thing, healing thing for them.
Yeah. And I just wanted to go back because it was so interesting, like hearing you talk about trauma and stuff, because like that's something that I've talked to a lot of people about. So I would say I am someone that's had trauma in my life, and that was kind of a part of my healing journey. But there's heaps of people that I've met that haven't had that. And like, I just get worried about when you hear all this stuff online that like, basically like addiction is trauma, like, or it has to be that. And it's definitely an interesting kind of conversation, and probably true for a lot of people. But it's not necessarily true for everyone as well. And I find even there's like a lot of, I hate using this term, but like people that are like high functioning that kind of actually get prevented from finding some recovery maybe when they hear that stuff, because similar to your story, they're like, well, I haven't had anything. Like they're literally just like, yeah, well, I really don't have anything that I've found that traumatic, and I don't know why it's happening. I don't relate to these people, so I'm not gonna kind of reach out for help. Yeah, it's like it's a weird thing within the whole space. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've heard trauma described as like, you could be drowning in a swimming pool or drowning in the ocean. You're still drowning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And trauma, I guess, is as bad as the experience is for you. I mean, that's where, like, for me to think of, if I had trauma, I just like, well, I didn't grow up in like a violent home. I didn't grow up in a war torn country. I didn't, wasn't, physically abused, sexually abused. So like, I guess, but that's because I can think of that. I think that's trauma, but maybe I have had experiences, and then my body recognizes that as trauma.
Yeah.
But my brain would just go, "Oh, that's nothing. That's nothing." Like, what are you complaining about? Just like, just keep pushing it away, I guess. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. And I've never heard that one before, actually. You could be drowning in the ocean or drowning in the pool, you're still drowning. I like that one. And yeah, I've heard it explained like that. It's like the emotional dysregulation that you experience, people say, and that's definitely true as well. So when did we last chat? When did we have our first podcast? What year was that? Was that 21 or 22 or something? Maybe 22.
it would have been last year. So, I mean, I think your podcast was the first one where Mitch and I were interviewed on.
That's
So
right.
it wouldn't have been that
Yeah.
long when we started, because we started ours at the end of, it was like June, I think. So it wouldn't have been maybe a couple of months after that, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So, what have you been doing since then? Well, I kind of know. It's like, it's one of those weird fucking leading questions, but what's life been like? Like, what have you been up to? Because I remember distinctively you saying in that podcast, or both of you guys saying, that you just kind of like quit your jobs and started the podcast, and you were just sort of just venturing into the whole space, and didn't really have a lot going on, so you were just making heaps of videos from the podcast and doing the podcast and all that kind of stuff. And you're, as you said, you were right at the start of that journey. Like, what's kind of happened since with the podcast? Got pretty popular actually for a while. I had lots of people telling me, "Heard your podcast? Have you heard this other one called the Last Drinks Podcast with Will and Mitch?" And I was like, "Yeah, they're on the podcast."
Yeah, well, we kept diving into it and kept exploring it, and during that period, like Mitch, he decided that he was going to do this gap year of traveling, which he went. Fucking hell. Oh, God damn it. So yeah, we just kept exploring it. Mitch kind of, after he quit his job, then decided he was going to go on this gap year, sort of spiritual travel overseas, which he went and explored for about, I guess, the last 12 months. He wrapped it up probably, I think it was like in the middle. It was about a year from sort of when he quit his job.
Yeah.
He kind of went all over the place and then did lots of different things, and it was an interesting exploration because I mean he had his last relapse one part of his trip, then he came back and then he stopped and he's been sober since. And so we had a lot of discussions about especially him traveling around drinking, because I thought that was a good aspect to cover, how he navigated being in hostels completely sober while everyone else is drinking, and he managed to get to a place where he had no issue with it. And like for myself, like it was, yeah, just keep exploring and interviewing lots of different people, as you know, probably with doing with your podcast, where it becomes more than it becomes something that's not just for you anymore. It's
Yeah.
for the people that tune in and listen, and then you know just building on that, and then you get messages from people and how it's helped them out, and then people reaching out wanting to come and share their stories and navigating that, and then building, I guess, some sort of social media momentum with it. And then I guess when Mitch came to the end of his tenure overseas and deciding his next chapter, which he's now gone to start exploring that, I kind of got to a point with it. Well, I guess what was happening for me at the time was then I started fiddling around with making video content for myself on my own social media. And then that started popping off to where I think like my Instagram in like April was about 5,000 followers, and now I've just passed over 100,000 followers,
Wow.
7 months later, whatever it is, 6-7 months later. And then building up on TikTok, lost the TikTok account, got another one. So I think I built that back up.
Why did you lose it? How do you lose it?
Multiple violations of hate speech was the verdict.
Is that because you make fun of those like alpha bro guys? Yeah. They consider that hate speech.
Yeah, you got to be tactical, I guess. I mean, I think I've noticed it's just tweaking and figuring out what you can and can't say, because I guess whatever sort of AI is picking up on certain words that you say. I mean, certainly if you mention the top G, Andrew Tate, I think it just flags the video, so you work your way around that. But to the point where I don't really, if I'm making videos on old mate, I don't put them on TikTok. But like I've had stuff for bullying and harassment where you call someone a dickhead in a video, so like, all right, well, I'll just cut that bit out and then you put it up and then it's fine. Like I had a video, and it was it was a stupid video. Like it was this video I was goofing on this guy who had this ridiculous morning routine. That we see all these absurd morning routines. So I made a video just ridiculous. It got to 1.8 million views in less than 24 hours, and then it got removed. It got removed for fraud, and I don't know whether it was because I said that I was selling an $800,000 life course or something in the video, sarcastically. So I appealed it. I think it went back up briefly, and then it got removed entirely for sexually suggestive content. And I think it's because I said that I have violent, rabid, sweaty sex with my wife or something. So I got so annoyed at it because I was just like, it was just like, fuck, this is my best video. This is the best, like most. It would have kept going into the millions and it gets removed. So I re-uploaded it, but then over the violent, sweaty sex part, I did a voiceover and then just put vanilla casual lovemaking or something. So just completely changed the wording. And yeah, so then that did whatever it did. But, it's a funny thing, the whole social media thing. I mean, Instagram really hasn't had that much issue. I'm getting some dramas with stuff where like, oh, this has been reported for this. You're just like, oh God, it's a funny new world. But yeah, so I just kind of dived into that. So that's where the podcast that we did, Mitch and I, has kind of been put on the back burner a bit because I guess I just saw that this stuff was like, oh wow, this stuff's certainly popping off to something. Well, let's keep following that and see where that goes.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. It's pretty interesting. I must admit, genuinely, I'm kind of like a fan of, like, I don't just follow you. I'm actually like a fan. I watch all the videos, like, and this, because it cracks me up, man, because I remember seeing some of those guys and just like more than anything, just like laughing really,
Yeah.
and just going, it's so ridiculous, like some of the shit that they come out with. And yeah, it's just, you do some really funny takes on that and other stuff as well. So it's what's it like getting a big social media following like that? Like, I think the most that we got is 50,000 on TikTok, and nothing really changes. Did anything change for you? Like at 100,000 on Instagram or however many you got on TikTok, like do you get lots of people reaching out or lots of like, because you're getting like 5,000 comments and things like that on your posts, like
Yeah.
yeah.
So the notifications don't stop. It was fun. I did a podcast with a friend about a couple of weeks ago, and so she posted a clip and I shared it on my, I guess, Instagram, like the collaborative thing.
Yep.
And she's saying to me, like, I'm still getting notifications for that. Like, it wasn't stopping for her. She was just like, how do you deal with that? It's just like, that's just every time I open my phone, there it is. It's just so,
Yep.
it can be quite overwhelming. And, especially, I mean, like the messages, like my DMs, it's kind of a bit of a mess in there now. But so yeah, there's like, I guess, attention with it, which, um, people are enjoying what I'm doing, which is great. And like I mean, I just like the creative part. Like I enjoyed making the content.
Yep.
It was really stemming from the fact that I used to consume a lot of this content and I've kind of seen the other side of it and try and question it, perhaps like show it and like have a difference of opinion on it. Say, well, maybe have you ever thought about it this way? And then turns out other people kind of resonated with it. And so there was just more incentive and more, motivation for me to just keep pursuing it. Because I think that, I guess everybody seems to have an opinion online, especially when it comes to like dating and relationships. I don't know whether, I mean, I don't want to be entering some sort of like, I'm a relationship coach, dating coach person, which has been, oh yeah, why don't you do that? It's just like, I wouldn't call myself. I mean, I don't even know how do you classify yourself as an expert? Because someone who's been in a lot of relationships, would they actually be an expert? I don't know. Which isn't me because I haven't had a lot of long-term relationships. So, but yeah, it was just I kind of had ideas on things and then adding sort of humor to it because I've always been a fan of stand-up comedy and comedy videos and stuff. So that was always, and I mean, it even stems from, I guess, the podcast that Mitch and I did where we just crack jokes and make each other laugh. Because I mean, that was the thing that when we were starting Last Drinks, Mitch went sort of looking at other podcasts and he kind of, because we kind of fuck around a bit and make jokes and stuff. And he kind of thought that, like the recovery space, I mean, it is like, it can be like a difficult, heavy subject at times, but you got to try and find some humor in it and lighthearted stuff. So it's not all serious
Yeah.
because, yeah, I guess because at times, I guess that can be a coping mechanism for difficult things is to just make fun of it and joke about it. So.
Yeah. Well, it's so fucked up. Like when I feel a bit bad because I never know. I usually just assume people are okay with it. But like when you're telling throwing your guitar lead over the beams or the awnings or whatever you said you had there, I kind of laughed at that. I don't know. I'm just like, it's, and I find a lot of people in our that have been through like really tough stuff do have that like good black humor to go along with it as well, and it does
Yeah,
help, I think. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I remember I met a guy in rehab, and he was an ice addict, and he was relaying sort of he was in a really dark place, and you know he was thinking of ending his life, and then I guess the thought for him was just to go down to I think it was go down to the valley in Brisbane and start smoking ice, and then he completely forgot about killing himself because he was too busy being addicted to ice. So it's just
That's right.
yeah.
It is funny. Like I'll always never kind of forget one of my mates. Like he had drug problems and whatever, but then in sort of like his sober period, he had a real trouble with like the pokies and just gambling. Like he'd always go gambling. I don't know. Anyway, this night that he came around, he'd just been to the pokies and he'd lost like his whole paycheck and he had no money, and it was like just happened again. And he was like just relaying the story about he was just driving home and all he could think about was driving into a pole. And like we're all sitting around, people think this is like retarded, but we're all sitting around and just we're all just like pissing ourselves. And he was laughing as well, kind of like recounting the story and just recounting the madness of the whole thing. And it was actually there was something in that was kind of like healing for him, just to kind of know that I guess he's not crazy and just have other people around to just share and be kind of normal about it. And he always talked about how that helped him kind of process it more than just I don't know sitting around and just talking about it like in a really depressed way, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess if it can finding ways to heal or whatever, whatever you see fit, if it works, it works. And yeah, like talking about stuff like that, maybe in not such a serious tone, if it works, yeah, like it's that's always. I mean, even in some of those, I guess those rooms, even like AA meetings, there was always guys you get up. I remember there was one time, and this guy was relaying a lot of his journey. I mean, a lot of it's on the grand scheme of things, it's just like fuck. This guy was a bit of a loose unit, but he just told it in a way that was funny.
Yeah.
And then so I, for some reason, thought, oh well, I'll try and get up there in an AA meeting and try and tell my story in a funny way. But because it was an AA meeting where everyone's like serious and like this
Yeah.
is your truth, and we don't want to, and they didn't know me because they knew this guy. So I get up there and do that, and nobody laughs. I'm like, oh fuck, it didn't work. But they didn't because they just been respectful. But like, I guess if I knew me more, maybe it would be a bit different. But that was
Yeah.
kind of a funny thing. It's like trying to make people laugh and sharing some of the most horrible things that you've gone through in your life.
It is funny when you think about it. It is funny. So what's next? So you're doing all that stuff. Do you like have you been someone in your journey? Have you always had a plan, or have you just kind of always sort of gone with it? Or what's next for Will?
I mean, I'm just continually with these videos. I mean, I guess with the sober stuff, I haven't really given too much thought because, like, I mean, it is part of my identity, I guess, but it's just not at the forefront.
Yeah.
Especially being, I guess, it's 6.5 years, I guess, down the track, and I'm finally in a place where that that desire or whatever urge I have to reach for drinking is gone. Like I don't have it anymore. I mean, I have desires to escape. Don't get me wrong, and struggle with my own mental health issues. But I guess whenever it gets to just like, oh well, you could go drink, or you could. I mean, even if I was start up a drug habit, it's just like, well, this is probably not going to lead you anywhere. Like whatever you think, whatever relief temporarily you think you're going to get from this, it's just going to take a lot more from you in the long run. So you're just better off not starting. So
Yeah.
um, I mean, with the content stuff, it's just trying to see if this. I mean, obviously, just trying. I mean, if it's possible to monetize it, which doesn't seem to be a thing on for any of the social media platforms that I'm on, through Instagram or TikTok, because they just say this is not monetizable. So I'm like, oh, all right. So because it's just so easy. Like I get so much fulfillment out of doing it, and then getting messages from people just like really loving the stuff you're doing, and it even stems back from the stuff we got from the podcast. Like that our podcast helped people, and it was always Mitch and I sort of said, like, if it helped one person, we've done our job, and it managed to help way more than that. And I mean, that's, I guess, my sober journey, sharing my story. Like, it's to help other people. I mean, like with yourself, with your podcast, like that's what it's there for, to help others who are struggling, that there is a way out, and there's, you can get out of this. It's not a permanent thing. There was a time where I thought it was. Like, I thought that this is all life was going to be, and there wasn't much of a life to begin with. And to think of 6.5 years now, from when I was in that, cheap rental, barely surviving, just drinking myself stupid, to think where I am now is just, it's just like it's just like a whole new world, I guess. It's just like I've completely like reset my life and restarted it, I guess. And I mean, if the content stuff that I'm doing leads, I'm just following it, I guess, and just, with good faith and hope that it'll continue to build into something really positive, and if it make a good impact on the world, because I guess I need to do things that are fulfilling, so then life is worth living.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Awesome. Hey, thanks for coming on and sharing your stuff. Where can people find you if they want to check out some of your videos and content and get behind what you're doing and buy? I like that concept that you can do on your social media. Is buy you a coffee. I like that. Where can they do that?
Yeah, so my Instagram is just my full name, Will Hitchins, all one word. TikTok, it's Will_Hitchins. Our podcast that Mitch and I started, which is currently, I guess, an indefinite hiatus, is called Last Drinks Podcast, and that can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And then on social media, it's Last Drinks Podcast on Instagram and TikTok, and then also YouTube. And that's where you can find sober content from our episodes, where we've interviewed plenty of people, including Jack, in one of the earlier episodes. And then my social media is just a bizarre array of nonsense of me creating some commentary on some of the finer things on the internet, I guess.
Love it, mate. Love it. Thanks again for coming on, and peace, everybody. Bye.
See ya.